Joint Staff, Central Command, State, all believed or hoped that somehow Pakistan that they were our ally. I mean, that word ally was used, and that and we believed or were gullible for a period of time that they might actually become an ally. Fact is, ISI, the intelligence service in Pakistan, and the Pakistani Army, that's who runs things in Pakistan. And they have zero interest in an Afghanistan that was stable, secure, because Afghanistan would naturally be a friend of India.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Backstory. I'm Dana Lewis. I've been traveling from London to Florida, and now to the south of France. It's been amazing to cautiously, with mask, board a plane and see how other people are coping in the pandemic. It's been liberating and a bit scary watching as some people don't take COVID seriously enough, and others who understand this is a new chapter, but it's not over. Take care of yourselves and get the vaccine. It works. Billions have now had it. I had to do a segment this week because of Afghanistan. I really wasn't going to launch a new season until September, but the events are so dramatic. If you follow me, you'll know that I was one of the first reporters into Afghanistan after 9/11. I was there many times in the years after, embedded as a reporter with U.S. troops. And I began to believe all those commanders who said the Afghan Army would be strong and not let the country descend again into chaos when an American withdrawal inevitably occurred. Now we have collapse of the Afghan government, and the Afghans are exposed to years more of the Taliban, who are brutal and extreme and have not cut ties, say experts, with Al-Qaeda and others. Coming up, an Afghan who has run programs educating women in Afghanistan. Now she is on the run and in hiding and in danger. All women are. But first, a former American general who served in Iraq and Afghanistan about what happened today, what led to this collapse of the Afghan Army, and what comes tomorrow. All right, joining me now from the United States is Ben Hodges, a former lieutenant general in the U.S. Army. He was the commander of U.S. forces in Europe. He is currently the Pershing Chair in Strategic Studies at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Hi, Ben, and good to talk to you again.
Dana, thank you for the opportunity.
Would you call this a disaster? And you feel free to use your own terms as to what's taking place in Afghanistan, especially today.
Well, certainly it's a catastrophic outcome for millions of Afghans, as well as for American policy, and also for the entire coalition. You know, it was not just the United States. There were many other countries that also threw in with us. And so, you know, there's no way we can shine this up and find too many bright spots right now.
Who are you blaming for this?
Well, well, let me say up front, I support the president's decision to withdraw. I think the speed and the execution is not working out like anybody would have hoped, because we didn't get policies in place first for the withdrawal. Specifically, how do you get interpreters out, for example? So getting the policy right is always the most important thing, and we hadn't gotten the policies right necessary to implement the president's direction. Having said that, now I think to answer what your real question is, how did it go so badly, despite the money, the lives lost, the effort by thousands of really, really good, fine diplomats, officers, soldiers, and others? I think number one, we lost sight of what the strategic objective was. I mean, ultimately, it's the job of the president to lay out the strategic objective, and then for his team to build the plan to carry it out. We lost sight of that. Number two, I really put the greatest amount of blame on Pakistan and the inability of successive administrations to figure out a strategy where Pakistan would not be able to give safe haven to the Taliban and to Al-Qaeda.
Why are you supporting President Biden's decision to pull out? Because a lot of people will say this will be one of the worst foreign policy disasters of his term. they'll say that President Trump laid the groundwork for this by directly negotiating with the Taliban and empowering the Taliban and announcing, both presidents announcing that this was going to be a calendar-based pullout rather than a condition pullout.
Yeah. Well, I think certainly the administration is going to come in for some well-deserved criticism for how this has happened and the way it happened so fast without having the policies in place that I talked about earlier. There's no way to find any bright spots in this. However, it really is self-serving by many people, and I'm watching everything that you're watching here over the last few weeks of people that had hands in it over the last 20 years, that had a role to play, whether they were at whatever level they were in. The president, the administration is going to get a lot of blame, but where we are today has so much to do with where we were 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and so on. And I think that there was a reluctance for a variety of reasons to do what was necessary with especially Pakistan, which means you then have to bring in India into the equation to figure out how do we deny safe haven. There's no insurgency in history of which I'm aware where the insurgents were defeated as long as they had a significant safe haven across the border. And that's what the Taliban and Al-Qaeda have had for the last 18 years or so.
Why didn't the U.S. confront that? I mean, you were the director of the Pakistan-Afghanistan coordination cell at the Joint Staff. I mean, you know very well what
Exactly.
The double game that Pakistan was playing.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have somebody like Admiral Mike Mullen as the chairman at the time. This was I was the director of the PAC from 2000, basically all of 2011. And so I was part of the problem, if you will. But I remembered seeing the chairman work so hard with Pakistani leadership, the administrations, Joint Staff, Central Command, state, all believed or hoped that somehow Pakistan that they were our ally. I mean, that word ally was used, and that and we believed or were gullible for a period of time that they might actually become an ally. Fact is, ISI, the intelligence service in Pakistan, and the Pakistani Army, that's who runs things in Pakistan. And they have zero interest in an Afghanistan that was stable, secure, because Afghanistan would naturally be a friend of India. And so for Pakistan, they did not want the outcome that we had hoped there would be. And so that's why I think, and of course they have nuclear weapons. And so the administrations were understandably and correctly concerned about control of those nuclear weapons, the fissile material, what's going to happen to that. And I think the big mistake when you ask who's to blame was that we tried to isolate Afghanistan as to one problem set, Pakistan as another problem set.
You were there. And I was there many times listening to commanders like yourself. And first of all, maybe you would agree with me that in terms of the soldiers on the ground, American soldiers on the ground, Canadians, French, German, I can go down the whole list, that they did the job. I mean, I think that they were able to do what they needed to do in Afghanistan in very difficult circumstances. Would you agree with me there before I go on?
Well, of course, I'm very proud of what the coalition accomplished over the years. When I was leaving in November 2010 from Kandahar, I, like many others, thought this might work. I mean, because I had met so many quality Afghan officers and hardworking citizens, and I saw the effort that was being put in by U.S. Army and other U.S. and coalition forces, but also by our diplomats. Yeah, but so many others have as well. That like, okay, it's better now than it was a year ago, and you saw these things. But I think in our heart of hearts, we wanted it to be successful because we saw the effort and the lives that were lost. But at the end of the day, it's a responsibility for all of us to say, look, the Afghans, they won't do it by themselves. If we expect them,
why wouldn't they do it by themselves? I mean, the Afghan Army in particular, training, equipment,
huge efforts by everybody, from the U.S. to all of the NATO allies that went in there and said, look, the only way Afghanistan is going to stand up on its own is if it has its own army. We've done everything we can to train them. Why do you have, up to 300,000 Afghan soldiers, if the number was ever that big, but that's some of the official numbers? They, basically ran away with a whimper.
So, Napoleon says the moral is to the physical as 3 is to 1. In other words, moral courage, moral power is more significant than the math of mass. And history is full of examples of where smaller but more determined forces with greater willpower were able to defeat much larger forces. And that's what's happening right now. Afghan security forces, let's assume that those numbers are even close to correct, outnumber the Taliban 4-1. And yet they are running away, surrendering or disappearing at a high rate of speed. And, when I think about the handful of soldiers at Cap Keating, for example, or other cases where American soldiers or other coalition forces were surrounded by hundreds of Taliban and they held them off and fought like crazy. I kept thinking, surely there will be a few cases like that of Afghan security forces that will do that, and that would give courage to others. But I just haven't seen any of that. So this, clearly the Taliban has greater willpower. They believe in their cause more than Afghan security forces do.
When I entered Afghanistan after 9/11 in the north, right after Ahmad Shah Massoud had been assassinated from the Northern Alliance, right after 9/11 occurred, there was a lot of talk that the Taliban could push right up into Central Asia and just destabilize all of Central Asia, along with Al-Qaeda in terms of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and on and on. Do you fear what comes tomorrow now?
Well, first of all, there are, of course, lots of people, including me, that are very concerned about what's going to happen to women, what's going to happen to people who tried to make the government of Afghanistan work, who were out there. Of course, we worry about that. You're already hearing reports and seeing video of what's happening as Taliban come back into control in certain places. This is not going to be pretty. But at the same time, I reject when people say it's fault of the United States that this is happening. It's the hundreds of thousands of Afghan soldiers and police that are running away, that are exposing these women and others to what the Taliban are going to do. So we need to keep, it's too easy just to say the president made a huge mistake, it's all his fault, or it's all the U.S. fault, despite the many, many mistakes that we made, as I've tried to describe here earlier. In the region, U.S. Department of Defense lines up the combatant commands, put a lot of effort into it, try to get, where is Central Command, where is Indo-Pacific Command, where is U.S. European Command, where are the boundaries? And one of the unfortunate boundaries between Central Command and Indo-Pacific Command is the border between Pakistan and India. So India is in the Indo-Pacific region, Pakistan is in Central Command's region. But yet the strategy clearly has got to encompass that whole region if we want to make sure that Al-Qaeda is not able to come back to life, basically, and start expanding into Central Asia, because that's going to cut across multiple commands.
Last question to you. You were in Iraq as well. Is this the end of the U.S. Army engaging on behalf of the U.S. government in nation building and trying to stand up independent governments? I mean, Afghanistan will be a monument to how that just has not worked, despite the money, despite the effort. U.S. Army can take the ground and they can fight, but to expect them to stand up an independent nation, even over a 20-year period, it's impossible.
So for sure, we made mistakes. I personally made huge mistakes as a brigade commander in Iraq and as the corps commander, multinational corps, or corps operations officer, multinational corps Iraq, and then Afghanistan. But you could see that we were adapting our training, we're learning, our understanding, building up depth of knowledge of the culture. But at the end of the day, our civilian leadership is who has to set the priority, lay out the strategic objective. So, of course, it's not the end of the Army being involved in nation building, because at some point there will be an administration that will say, in order to prevent a crisis from happening, we're going to need to do some things here. The nation building or being the world's policeman or any of these other sort of titles are not inherently evil. What is wrong is if the strategic objective is not clearly defined and properly resourced with all the elements of power of a nation. And if we don't keep a clear eye on that and also have built in the mechanisms that say we got it wrong. Clausewitz said that the first duty of the diplomat and the general is to understand the nature of the conflict. That's where we keep getting it wrong.
Certainly got it wrong. No argument, but not for a lack of effort from a lot of soldiers. So Ben Hodges, former Lieutenant General in the U.S. Army and chair of the Pershing Chair in Strategic Studies. Ben, thank you so much for taking some time.
Okay, Dana, thank you for the privilege.
All right, Pashtani Durani is the founder and also the executive director of Learn, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating women in Afghanistan. And Pashtani, if I can begin just with that. I mean, if the Americans had any success story during the invasion after 2001, it was that they had this ability to reopen schools and reopen society to women. And all of that seems to be in grave danger now.
Yes, definitely. That was one of those things that the West or the Americans could claim: women rights, political rights, constitutional rights, human rights. Although they tried abusing it, but yeah, apart from that, they did highlight a lot of things. So, including girls' education, it was, major trophy for them to celebrate in the West that this is how your tax money is spent. But what people didn't knew was they were enabling warlords within the country. They were enabling corrupt leaders within the country. There were no checks and balances. Girls' education. I know fighting ghost schools with my government all the time, asking them if that my district had ghost schools, ghost teachers, ghost students. And the West failed in this sense where they were not able to hold on to that check and balance. You are giving them money, but where is your check and balance? And that's where they fail immensely, especially when it comes to girls' education. If they had ensured in the past 20 years that all girls from all areas, all geographies had access to education, all boys would have access to education, we wouldn't be standing here.
Well, I mean, that's a tough verdict on American efforts, isn't it? Because, in my time in Afghanistan, talking to everybody from young captains on the ground with U.S. forces to American generals, this constant struggle and challenge to try to stop the systemic corruption was mountainous. And, they did everything that they could when they were there. They tell us to try to get the money to the people who really deserved it. But it was very, very difficult to disperse funds to organizations that would make sure that, the money went to where it did. The corruption in the Afghan government was just unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. That's what I'm trying to say. I am going to give you an example. The US, the West, they gave funds to entities that were run by the government officials. So, for example, person works in the morning in the presidential palace in the ministry, is on a higher position. Then in the evening, they have a side business, which is an NGO or something like that. And it's not very well received in Afghanistan right now. The NGO business is not, it's sort of business for them, right? And they used to run these NGOs or these CSOs, and they used to get funds from their ambassador friends or all these bigger organizations as donor organizations. So I think if they wanted to do something, they would stop there. They would stop donating funds or funding people who are already in the government, and they would actually empower the civil society or the people on the ground or the rural population. So,
but
yes,
I mean, would you say that the U.S. officials were U.S. officials trying to get the money to the right place, or they simply didn't bother?
not only the US officials, the whole West, everyone involved in Afghanistan on one level or another. I mean, like there are NGOs from even Bangladesh, like BRAC, and they are also involved in Afghanistan. So I'm not just going to highlight the side of the West or the US only. I'm trying to say one thing, that they tried, but they didn't try so much that they could get it to actual people. They tried circling back to the same elite community and giving funds to them and empowering them. I mean, like how much money can one person get until they're full? And I'm not sure. My leaders there, they have big bellies. They still love money. They still want money. So yeah.
I remember being in Kabul. I was there in 2001 after the Taliban were forced from power. And then going back, every few years I would go back and do stories. And over that time, visually, just driving around that main center in Kabul, where government members owned homes, increasingly seeing the construction of small homes becoming bigger homes, becoming villas, and they were in many ways monuments to how Afghan authorities were siphoning off funds that were really meant for people.
Exactly. I mean, like one house in Wazir Akbar Khan costs around $2,000, right? For rent per month. I can literally build a digital school with that for a whole village. So can you see the difference? You like one whole year in Wazir Akbar Khan is equal to 12 district schools, 12 village schools within 12 villages. So yeah, my government is corrupt. That I totally get, and that's the reason. Like 40 countries helped them stabilize, and they were still not there to fight back terrorism or neighboring countries. What were they doing?
What is happening now? The Taliban are literally washing over cities there, taking back huge swaths of territory. You must be shocked.
I'm shocked. I'm mortified. I'm horrified. I'm hopeless. A lot of words and adjectives for you, but all of those because I had to leave everything in the morning. I had to leave. You are one person one day. You are in your community, you belong there, you talk to people, you are one of them, and then the other day you just don't have anything. All you have to do is run, and you have to do is leave, because that's the only option to survive. So right now, people within the city, in the Kandahar city, the Taliban are celebrating, they are firing celebratory fires. There's no resistance. People are scared to talk back or even say that we don't want Taliban. So things are getting back to normal, but it's Taliban, so I'm not sure what to expect anymore. Cities are just falling like, dominoes.
Have you been on the run yourself, or what are you doing to protect yourself?
I did. I had to leave my house in the morning.
So as of today,
you
left your house and you've had to relocate?
Yeah.
Because
I run an NGO, I am working with girls, and these are things that people don't receive well when it comes to the Taliban. Even if I'm not just going to sit here and assume and all that. I remember a few days ago, I was talking on this news channel. I received in the tweet reply, the Taliban troll, he's like, you are in some serious need of some lashing. So I'm pretty sure if not all Taliban feel the same, a few of them pretty much would feel the same to lash me or murder me. So yeah.
Somebody said that you tweeted that an Afghan journalist had put you on a Taliban end list.
No. A foreigner journalist put me on Afghanistan endgame list. Endgame. It's like, this irony people use in the West when it comes to Afghanistan. It was used during the Cold War and the Soviet and all that. So it's not right. It's not humane. We are people.
Yeah, I can't imagine a foreign journalist doing that, and I think it's despicable. But being on that list represents what? I mean, that what are they trying to imply? That the Taliban get even revenge list would include you?
Probably not. I'm not sure. I don't know what to say. I'm going to be very honest. there are times where people are like, oh, you're just taking too much pressure. But then I know for sure, if I'm talking from yesterday, and I have received so many threats in my inbox is filled with that. They're like, okay, you should be doing this, you should be not doing this, you are in need of lashing, you are in need of hiding, you should leave your house, blah blah blah. So I'm not gonna say okay, and I'm gonna play the victim card that majority of people have done, and it's very worn out that, oh, I'm a victim here, blah blah blah. But I lost my political identity, right? I lost my right to the vote, right? I lost my right as a woman in Afghanistan to education, to socialize, to mobilize. That's losing everything. That's already revenge that they are getting. So even if I live, what is my life? I'm hopeless.
And all of the people that you've helped all over the country, those young women that were able to go out and actually go to school and leave the house and work and have a voice. What's happening to them? Some people have said the Taliban are forcing them back into marriages of Taliban fighters, and women are being told to stay indoors. What is happening?
I remember getting in touch with this Kandari woman yesterday, and she was like, I left my house, the district, because I have young daughters and I was in the city. We gave them groceries last week, and she says that now I don't even know what to do because they are literally here. What to do. So women, not only that, like, not only access to education, like it's a privilege for us. I'm going to be honest. Going out is a privilege because we don't have that kind of social norm to go out. But apart from that, getting forcefully married to someone, that's something monstrous. And that's what monsters do.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And the Taliban hasn't changed in 20 years.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What will they do to the country if they can control it?
If they control it, our economy will go down. People will stop going to educational institutions, not only girls, but also boys. People will lose jobs. A country will go back into poverty because Taliban are guerrilla warfare, or an organization that fights. There is no political institution that they have built. There is no political institution that they run. And there is no consensus on how political or governments are run. So even if they make one, I'm not sure how they're going to run it, how they're going to develop an economy, how they're going to compete with the regional powers or even cooperate with them. I'm not sure. So the country is going to fall back in economy, in poverty, in everything that we right now have gained, even with the corrupt government.
I mean, it's really tragically turning the clock back. And you would think that for the sake of keeping a few thousand American troops there, to keep the Afghan government steady, that President Biden has made a critical mistake here in foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy, because the Taliban will also embrace groups like Al-Qaeda again.
I feel like, even if President Biden wanted to withdraw to make his comeback, very famous, that he's better than Trump, he should have done this. But he shouldn't have legitimized the Taliban in the process. He shouldn't have enforced the Doha deal on us. He shouldn't have let Khalilzad dictate our, our lives for us. He shouldn't have let that happen. He enabled that. I'm worried about that part. I'm not worried about a few troops withdrawing, because a few troops cannot defend the whole country. I'm worried, and I'm sad about the fact that he legitimized everything when it came to Doha, to Qatar, to Taliban, what they stood for, how the violence escalated, how they didn't even try stopping it.
Because a lot of people don't understand, but the U.S. entered into discussions in Doha with the Taliban, so-called peace talks, which are laughable. I mean, it's a laughable, sadly laughable label. Exactly. And they didn't include the Afghan government even in those talks. So they legitimized the Taliban as an organization now in Afghanistan, an organization, a ruling organization of power.
Exactly. And you go to them, you talk to them, you want to withdraw, that's totally fine. It's your right? As a person, as a country, it's not, we are not supposed to be dependent on you for the next 40 years. I personally wouldn't want that, right? But you legitimizing them, you letting them do what they did and not asking them to stop, because US is literally asking every other country, oh, you're abusing human rights, you're doing this, you're doing that, blah, blah, blah. Then why are you not stopping the group that you're literally in talks with? You had more leverage. You could pressurize them into doing stuff. You could even literally ask them, into a deal, but they did it.
Pashtani, what is the Afghan government doing and the Afghan army doing? Why are they not standing up to the Taliban? Why do they just continue to give ground?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to think of them. I thought to myself even yesterday, I was like, they're not going to abandon us. They're not going to leave us. And now all I can think of is like, maybe they were just trying to get out of Afghanistan. Maybe they were just trying to grab all the aid money that they could, something like that. Because how could you just give up on the whole country? How is it even possible?
Do you still hold hope that they are regrouping, that the Afghan army will regroup and then push back and try to retake those cities? Or do you feel that you don't have hope? You're shaking your head.
No, I don't have any hope. If they had any strategy, they would have put it in place in the last 3 weeks when Kandahar was falling district by district, when Helmand was falling district by district, when Herat fell but also bounced back. What did they do? Nothing.
Do you think Kabul is going to fall? Some people are saying that it could fall within a matter of weeks, and that the Americans are already now preparing to possibly evacuate their own embassy.
So my staff member who's in Kabul, she tells me, yeah, Kabul is gonna fall. I personally am not sure. Maybe a deal will come through. Maybe something will happen, or if it remains in the same pace, yes, definitely Kabul is gonna fall.
And then it's done. The Taliban rule the entire country.
It's already over. If you think about it, Herat, Kandahar, Helmand, they are more strategic than Kabul. Kabul is a central province, right? It's not a bordering province, it's a central province. While these are like bordering provinces, they should have saved their own borders first.
At least 20 years ago, there were militias. I'm not saying they were a good thing, but there were pockets of the country that the Taliban could not take over.
Exactly.
Those malicious warlords had their own weapons, their own followers. They were able to protect their areas in the north. Suddenly, the U.S. really set about telling those militia leaders they needed to disarm, turn in their weapons, join the Afghan army and the Afghan government, which to a large degree they did. So now the situation may be worse today than it was 20 years ago.
Maybe because in a sense, Taliban are more evolved now when it comes to warfare. They are trying new techniques. They are inventing all these different sorts of cylinder bombs right now. They have support of regional partners in this, and they have more fiscal support, while our militia, even if they were private militias, they don't have any fiscal support. They were already alienated by our central government, and I'm not sure, I was the first person to talk anti-warlords and everything. Of course, they did abuse women's rights. I'm always going to say it out loud. But right now, we don't even have that resistance. We don't have that. Nothing.
The Northern Alliance has already lost the North.
The majority of the North is lost, yeah.
So there's really nothing left.
Exactly.
Except maybe Kabul, for now.
Yeah.
If
Ghazni fell, I'm not sure how Kabul going to stay.
Do you think that the Americans made a mistake by not confronting Pakistan? Because the Pakistan are supporting the Taliban, and we keep talking about the Taliban like they come from.
Yeah, but nobody talks about Pakistan.
It is about
out of nowhere. Yeah.
The former Canadian ambassador.
Yeah.
Chris Alexander, who I know well, just said, look, this is about Pakistan. We have never taken on Pakistan. And Pakistan, the ISI, is controlling what's going on in Afghanistan. Why why does the international community not confront Pakistan?
The whole point is this. We are literally asking them, why don't you confront them? Like, you have a leverage, right? You give them aid. Half of their highways are built with your aid. Why don't you confront them? But then I don't know, maybe they're too... I don't even know what to say. Yes, of course, Taliban come across the border. That's what they have been doing. That's what they are doing right now. Chris is very brave. That's very brave of him to say it out loud. And I wish other ambassadors and other countries would have followed, and that they didn't. It's a very sad thing. But at the same time, Pakistan could have been pressurized into actually working for peace towards Afghanistan. But I think the US made a serious, grave mistake when it came to legitimizing Taliban, but also at the same time turning a blind eye toward when it comes to Pakistan.
Where do you go from here? You've moved your house, and you fear a knock on the door?
I don't know. I don't have I don't have a plan, concrete plan. I'm just on the move. I'll keep moving until I cannot.
Will you try to leave the country?
Not sure. I don't know. I have a lot of family here. I have my father buried here. I can't just leave.
Plus, most Afghans cannot pick up and go
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
And tomorrow, what do you think? What does tomorrow bring? What comes
Can
next? What comes next? What do you think tomorrow we will see?
We already lost. We already lost. Now all we have to do is wait. What happens next? As a person, all I can do is ask the world to stop it, stop it from happening. Right? All I can do is talk and talk and talk, because that's the only thing I can do as a human rights activist. That's the only thing I can do. I'm not sure what the government, what the leaders, or what the West will do.
All right, Pashtani Durani, good luck to you. And I witnessed so much progress in Afghanistan, not all of it good, and it was multi-layered, so many different problems. But Afghanistan came a long way.
We did.
After 2001, and it is tragic to see it going this way. And
Exactly.
I think, and you maybe want to correct me, the West will have to come back. They will have to come back again if this doesn't go well with the Taliban, and nobody thinks it's going to go well. I mean, that Afghanistan will once again be used as a launchpad for terror from some groups, and that the West is making a big mistake by leaving.
Maybe not even terror, but also at the same time, it's a mess. It's a chaos right now. And chaos leads to more refugees, to more people displaced, right? And that's also a lot of pressure on the West, because a lot of people would want to leave for the West, right? So that's also a huge humanitarian catastrophe and crisis that's already happening in Yemen and Syria. And if we are added to that, the world is already full of refugees already. There are a lot of Afghans who are already refugees in the West, right? So it's already a mess. Even if the West doesn't come back, it's not like all they have to do is come back as saviors, but it's like a mess that they created and they didn't clean after themselves. It's that way. It's that what I'm talking about.
Pashtani, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Good luck
having
to
me.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that's our backstory on Afghanistan. Like I said at the beginning, I reported from Afghanistan many times for NBC and also Fox News. I'm sad for the country. I think we abandoned them. We meaning Western nations. We did it too quickly in the end and watched the collapse happen. It's not over. The West will be drawn back there because wherever there is a vacuum in power, it's a breeding ground for extremists and terror. Afghanistan won't let go so easily. And for the people of Afghanistan, now come the retributions by the Taliban, the oppression, the backward march that set the stage for the 9/11 attack on America 20 years ago. Sad days for the country, and soul-searching by the West. How did we let it happen? Thanks for listening to Backstory. Share this podcast. Listen for more. I'm Dana Lewis, and I'll talk to you again soon.